Hello and welcome back to the Privacy Files. Thank you for tuning in. I've got a bit of an interesting one today. Lately, I've been talking a lot about the surveillance economy and diving into AI, but today I'm discussing something that brings both of these topics together in a sort of interesting way. It's something that I think probably flew right over or right under everybody's radar. So let me start out the show with a question. When was the last time you actually owned something digital? Take a second and really think about it. I had this epiphany the other day. Your music, that's most likely Spotify or Apple Music. Your movies, you probably get from Netflix, Hulu, Prime, or one of the other half a dozen platforms. Your software, probably owned by Adobe or Microsoft 365. Even your damn car at this point might have some subscription features. We've been sold this idea that subscriptions are convenient. Pay a little each month, always have the latest version, no big upfront costs. And sure, on the surface, it feels like a win. But here's what nobody really says out loud. Subscriptions are, in my opinion, the perfect excuse for surveillance. They're basically pipelines. In order to keep charging you, they've got to keep watching you. And there's another piece to it: control. Subscriptions give companies a kill switch. If you don't pay, they don't just stop updating the product, they can shut it off entirely. Tesla, for example, can disable heated seats that you already paid for. Adobe can lock you out of your design files. A smart home company can brick your hardware overnight if they just randomly decide to shut down the servers. That's where I think this gets really interesting. The subscription model on the surface is common practice, basically for making consistent recurring income. But they're also building systems of control where you never really get to own what you bought. You're, in a sense, renting access, and in exchange, you're handing over not just your money, but your data, your habits, and in some cases, your freedom to walk away. It's like the World Economic Forum said: by 2030, you'll own nothing and like it. Well, it seems that very model is deeply embedded in our everyday lives, even more than we think. So, in this episode, I'm going to take you on a little journey. We'll start out with how we got here, what the companies are doing with your data that they're collecting through subscriptions, and why this model has quietly become the backbone of surveillance capitalism. But before we get into that, I'd like to start out by asking you just a tiny little favor. I put a lot of work into these videos every week, so if you could please take a minute and like the video. Comment on how many subscriptions you just realized you had. And finally, share this so other people who rely on monthly subscriptions to run their life can find out why that's not a model for success. Okay, thank you so much. Let's get into the video. So, like any good story, we're going to start at the beginning. So, let's start with how we even got here in the first place. Because if you're like me, you're old enough to remember the 90s. Back then, the world looked very different. You and your friends could go down to the store and buy a CD of your favorite artist. Let's be honest, you got it for that one hit song and you put up with the other ones. For those of you who are too young to know what a CD is, it's this round disc that you could buy and then you could put in a Discman and you had to hold it super still so it didn't skip. Wow, I am old. Anyway, you bought the CD and you owned it, or you bought a DVD of your favorite movie and it sat right on your shelf. You could go grab it whenever you wanted to and it was yours. Or you bought Microsoft Office or something like Photoshop. It came in a box with a license key, and that was it. You own the software. Done. End of story. Fast forward to today, none of that really exists anymore. Everything is marketed as a service. Adobe killed the box version of Photoshop in 2013. Now it's Creative Cloud or nothing. Microsoft Office, that's a subscription too. Cars, I mean, look at Tesla or BMW. They literally tried to charge people a monthly fee for heated seats. Tesla also has a bunch of its features locked behind subscriptions. And I probably don't even need to explain streaming. You already know what happened to music and movies. On the surface, companies sold this as convenience. They said, look, you'll always have the latest version. You don't have to worry about big upfront costs, and you just pay as you go. And sure, that sounds nice at first, but let's be honest. What they were really doing was shifting the balance of power. This was really all about scale and control. You see, once everything runs through a subscription, they control the terms. They can change the pricing, bundle features, or just yank stuff away. And you, as a consumer, don't really have any leverage. Since this is a privacy show, we should probably address those issues here. So think about this. In the old model, once you bought Photoshop on a CD, Adobe had no idea how you used it. They didn't know how many hours you spent editing, what features you liked the best, or even how often you opened the program. They just sold you the box and then that was the end of it. They hope maybe you come back for one of their other products. But with subscriptions, that's impossible. They have to monitor your use in real time because that's how they enforce a subscription. The entire model only works if they're constantly checking in on you. That's basically the quiet trade off I don't think people are really thinking about. You don't just lose your ownership, you traded it for visibility. They get to see how, when, and where you're using their product. And in return, you get temporary access as long as your payment clears. And that's a shift that sets up for everything else we're about to talk about today. Here's a hot take. Subscriptions are just spyware with a monthly fee. Everything that you do after logging in, every click, every highlight, every time you skip, it all goes straight into a behavioral profile that lives basically forever. They're turning your habits into training data. Take Amazon Kindle, for example. They know exactly what page you stop on, what time you're reading, and what lines that you highlight. And don't get confused. That is not innocent metadata. That's psychological profiling in essence. And when Amazon builds AI models to figure out what people want to buy or how to keep them addicted to Prime, whose data do you think they're feeding in? Yours and everyone else who uses the service. Or Spotify. Spotify is not in the music business. They're in the mood business. They filed patents for tech that can listen to your voice right through your mic, and it can analyze whether you sound happy, sad, drunk, or pissed off, and then recommend you songs and ads to match your emotional state. That's pretty creepy if you ask me. Now, that data, when it's all bundled together across different demographics and different age groups and all that, that is absolutely gold for AI. It trains algorithms on how to manipulate emotions at scale. Music as a service? No, no, no. That's emotional surveillance as a service. And let's talk about our kids for a second, because it's the same exact story with things like Xbox Game Pass. They're not concerned with what your kid is playing necessarily, but they're watching how long they play, when they get pissed off and rage quit, and what they binge watch, and even things like when they sleep. And that data doesn't die in some dashboard. It gets funneled into game design AI and ad targeting AI, algorithms that are specifically designed to keep you hooked and keep you spending. The subscription model gives them the perfect excuse to gather all of that information because, hey, they needed to authenticate you, right? They need to check that you're paid up. But that monitoring pipeline doesn't stop there. It's the pipeline feeding the AI models that will shape what ads you see, what music you're offered, what content rises to the top of your feed. If you think about things like TikTok, they've basically revolutionized these algorithms to push the boundaries of what you like. At this point, I can almost guarantee it would be really hard for you to tell if your taste in what you watch is your preference or the one that TikTok's designed for you. Now, this algorithm could easily be pushed to other platforms with far worse results than just watching videos. So yeah, you may be paying $9.99 a month for your subscription, but what you're really buying is the privilege of being turned into AI training data. The platform thanks you for your contribution. All right, real quick. So we've been talking about how subscriptions have turned into surveillance pipelines. But here's the twist. Not every subscription is working against you. There are a few that actually put you back in control. One of those is Aura. I partnered with them because they do something different. Aura monitors for your personal information being leaked online. They keep an eye on your financial accounts, and they help block the data brokers that we've been talking about. Basically, it's a subscription that fights the subscription trap. So yeah, we've torn apart the subscription model today, but this is one subscription I actually recommend. Because it's not about control. It's about giving you a little privacy back. And since you're part of this community, I've lined up a 63% discount just for you. The link's waiting in the show notes. So don't wait, go check them out today. That's Aura. All right, back to the show. So now let's talk about the other side of subscriptions, what I like to call the kill switch. When you buy something, you own it. When you subscribe, you're basically renting it on life support. The company can pull the plug whenever they want. Look at Tesla, for example. Again, you can buy a car with heated seats built in. The hardware is there, the wiring's there, it works. But if you don't pay the subscription, Tesla just disables it remotely. You're driving around with features that you've already paid for, being physically installed, and they flip a switch and say, Nope, not yours anymore. That's not ownership. That's basically hostage taking. Another good example here is Adobe. Say a designer wakes up one morning and finds that they're locked out of their own files because their subscription lapsed by accident. Imagine writing an entire book, finishing the draft, and then the publisher changes the locks on your office so you can't get in unless you pay them again. That's basically the logic of subscription culture. And it gets darker when you think about the stuff that actually matters. So things like medical devices, smart home systems, cars. There are people who've had their pacemaker data tied to subscription services. Now, that seems like a recipe for disaster to me. And there's also families who've had their smart thermostats and door locks completely bricked overnight because the company shut down its servers. You went to bed thinking you owned your house, and you woke up not even realizing you can't control the locks. Now, when you add AI into the mix, one of these kill switches that are in place, it's only a matter of time before they're automated. Think about it. Your car could be analyzing your driving behavior with machine learning. And if you fall outside the acceptable range, it could disable features or jack up your subscription price without a human ever even touching the system. Now, think about your health device feeding constant biometric data into an algorithm that could decide what tier of care plan you qualify for. And this isn't some futuristic sci fi movie either. It's already being tested right now. And that's the real danger that we can start piecing together. Subscriptions don't just create recurring revenue, they create control structures. And the addition of AI makes those control structures self enforcing. The company itself, or even a single person in a random department, doesn't have to decide to punish you. The system is built to do it automatically. And you're left living inside someone else's terms of service, where one missed payment or one algorithmic red flag can lock you out of the very things you thought you owned. Now, speaking of terms of service, this is a great time to talk about my latest project, Clarity. It's an app I built that allows you to quickly analyze terms of service and privacy policies. So, in the case I was just describing, you'd be able to know just where those boundaries are and if the service is worth it or not. This could be extremely valuable and time saving information. It will break down in clear language all the red flags and tell you exactly how to deal with them. This will give you peace of mind when making a decision, giving you clarity. There's also a malicious link and document analyzer, so you can be sure you're not letting malware into your system. You can also keep up with the latest privacy news and even compare platforms to see who's taking the most from you. Here's a hint: it begins with a G. There's now even a browser extension available for basically any browser that allows extensions and add ons. Sorry, DuckDuckGo users, you'll have to stick with the app. All of this is available for free for the community. So if you'd like to check it out and maybe even support the project, head over to myclarity.us or use the link in the show notes. Here's the part that really pisses me off. Even if you want to escape the subscription trap, most of the time you simply can't. The opt out doesn't exist anymore for most things. Back in the day, you somewhat had a choice. You could buy the CD or you could stream it on Napster. You could buy Photoshop in a box or pirate it if you were a little broke. But today, there's no buyout. Adobe doesn't even sell a perpetual license. Microsoft killed that option too. You don't get to own the thing anymore. You have to rent it. Same goes for hardware. John Deere locks farmers out of repairing their own tractors because the software requires a paid subscription to diagnose problems. That's not innovation. That's straight up extortion. You can spend six figures on a tractor and still have to ask permission to fix your own damn machine. And cars, they're no better. They're heading in the same direction. BMW's tested monthly subscriptions for different features, and Tesla's already been known to flip features on and off with subscriptions. Ford wants subscription based driver assistance. And this is optional now, but eventually it's just going to be baked in. You'll buy the car, but the features will be leased back to you month by month. And smart homes, same story there too. You buy a thermostat, a camera, a smart lock, and if the company decides to shut down the servers, poof, completely bricked. You've got basically expensive junk just sitting on your wall. There's no fallback mode, no way to keep using what you paid for. You're at the mercy of some corporation's quarterly report. And let's tie this back to AI, because once the option to opt out disappears, AI is going to turn the screws even tighter. If there's no way to buy once and own it forever, you're going to be locked into a system that's always watching, always updating, always adjusting the terms. That means the algorithm can decide what tier you belong in. They can decide what you pay, what features you get access to, and you can't walk away because there's going to be no offline alternative. That's the end game here. No ownership, no exit, and no privacy. Just a lifetime lease where the rent goes up, the surveillance never stops, and the door out has been welded shut. So let's zoom out and ask the obvious question. Who actually benefits from this subscription trap? Because it sure as hell isn't you or me. First, we have the corporations. For them, subscriptions mean predictable revenue. Wall Street loves it because it smooths out the numbers. Investors love it because the money never stops flowing and they have an incentive to keep growing. But it's not just about steady income. It's about keeping the leverage. Once you're locked in, they can raise the price whenever they want. Netflix, Spotify, Adobe, they all do it on a regular basis. And you've basically got no bargaining power because what's the alternative? Walk away and lose access to everything that you've put together? They know that you won't do that. The second people that benefit are the data brokers. Every subscription to them is a faucet of behavioral data. What you watch, when you listen, how often you log in, how long you stay engaged. That data gets packaged, analyzed, and in almost every case, sold. And here's the kicker. It's not just advertisers buying this stuff. Law enforcement agencies buy subscription data to sidestep warrants. Intelligence agencies use it to feed into profiling systems. You think that your binge watching habits are private? Think again. They know everything. And then third, we have AI. This is the one that I think people are not connecting or just starting to connect. Subscription data is the perfect fuel for training AI models because it's rich, structured, and basically endless. Spotify's emotional AI, Netflix's recommendation engines, Amazon's shopping algorithms, they're all built on top of subscription surveillance. The more you use it, the smarter the machine gets at predicting, and the better it gets at nudging your behavior. So basically, once AI gets involved even more, the control isn't manual anymore. It's automated, scaled, and almost completely invisible. So if they all win, who loses? Well, of course, we do. Consumers lose ownership, privacy, and freedom of choice. You don't really own anything anymore. You're just licensing it from a corporation that sees you as recurring revenue. And here's the part I want you to sit with. Subscriptions started as a business model, but they've mutated into infrastructure for surveillance capitalism. The fallout from this isn't just with the way that we pay more money over time. It's that we've built an economy where the default relationship between people and products is one of constant monitoring and control. And once you normalize that, it doesn't stop at Netflix or Adobe or any of these other people I've mentioned today. It creeps further into your life, into your car, your job, your house, and eventually even your body. So here's where we end up. Subscriptions aren't just about paying $10 a month for music or $20 for Photoshop. They become the default systems for how companies control access to our digital lives. The fallout is everywhere if you just look for it. You don't own your media. You're starting not to own your car features. You definitely don't own your smart home. And behind every subscription is a surveillance pipeline feeding into corporate databases, government contracts, and AI models that are learning how to predict and manipulate your behavior. That is the subscription trap. It looks convenient, it looks harmless, but what it really does is turn ownership into a rental agreement where you're always under watch and the kill switch is never more than a button away. Now, here's the thing. You can't opt out of all of it. The system is too baked in at this point. But you can get smarter about where you put your data, where you spend your money, and how much leverage you give these companies over your life. And that's what I'm here to help you with. If you want to take the next step, I've got the perfect thing for you. I've put together a collection of my best tools to help you in all areas of privacy in your life. You can head over and check them out on my digital store. I've actually just created a bundle with all of my tools so you can get them all in one shot. Or you can go through and check out and see which ones would be perfect for you. If you want to check them out, go over to beyondthefirewall.gumroad.com, or you can use the link in the description below. If you want to go even deeper, you can become a Firewall Insider. That gets you weekly members only content, access to my app, the Firewall Report, for real-time cyber threat alerts that you can't get anywhere else. You also get a digital copy of my book, The No BS Guide to Securing Your Network. And you get 20% off all of my products at my digital store for life. If you want to become a Firewall Insider, you can use the link in the description to get a 25% discount for life. And if you just want to support the show and keep me independent, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/beyond the firewall. I really appreciate all those who have supported. And that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for thinking critically. And as always, stay informed, stay secure, and stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.